Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Byrne.
And I'm Lori Gambacorta, and we are the co-founders of E.P.I.C, Empowering People, Inspiring Community. And here at E.P.I.C, we like to highlight the nonprofits in the area. And so in this particular segment, we are highlighting the Rainbow Youth Center that serves the Four Corners. And we're delighted to have with us today Jennifer Stucka-Benally, who is the Executive Director and one of the founders of the Rainbow Youth Center. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on the Good Karma Community Solutions episodes. And we would love to hear a little bit about your background and also about the Four Corners Rainbow Youth Center and how it got started.
Great. So a little bit about me is I'm a licensed clinical social worker and have been in the field of social work for at least about 16 years now. And the history of the Rainbow Youth Center is pretty unique and special. And I love to share this story because I think it really helps people understand why we exist and why we're doing what we're doing. I was working for Access Health System and doing both integrated and outpatient behavioral health care inside Durango High School at the school-based health center. And I wasn't very shy about who I was, and kids caught on that I was a queer and a queer woman working in the high school. And they started coming out to me. They would come to sessions, they would come to these integrated care appointments, and they would start sharing about themselves and what was going on for them, their experiences here in the Four Corners region, being in the LGBTQ plus community. And very quickly, I found out that there weren't any services for them. And they would ask a lot of questions and ask where they could find resources. And at the time, I was actually new to Durango. I had just moved here from Denver. And in Denver, there's a plethora of resources for the LGBTQ plus community. And there wasn't here. And I dug in and I did a lot of research, and I found there really has never been any youth serving organizations that really focus on the unique needs of the LGBTQ youth community. And so Sarah St. John and I were actually talking about a student one day, and this issue came up, how there's no resources for the LGBTQ plus community. And where she had grown up, there was an actual center that she went to and talked about her positive experience and said, why don't we start something like that here? And I said, great, sign me up. And so that's originally how we got started. We held focus groups. This was in the summer. We were at the end of the school year, and moving into the summer, we started advertising and marketing that we were going to be doing these focus groups. And to my surprise, a lot of people showed up, and we were just holding them at coffee shops, just kind of a neutral place to come and have conversations. Youth showed up, parents showed up, just, general stakeholders, community members, and unanimously what we heard is we just need safe space outside and after school that we can attend and feel a sense of belonging, gain skills on how do we navigate being in the LGBTQ plus community in a world that isn't fully accepting yet, and how do we learn how to be in our community and to thrive as an LGBTQ person. So we held a soft house in 2015, and 100 community members showed up and began helping us fundraise. And that's how we were able to raise just enough money for rent at a shared space. We do have our own space right now. We've been in our own space now for a little over a year, which is a huge accomplishment. Yay! But we did share space there for a while, and grew from 1 day a week after school to now we have 3 consistent days open a week plus 2 weekends a month that we're open.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about who it is you serve? Because I know you have, different age ranges and, different segments that you must offer different programs to. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. We do serve 5 all the way to 18, which is a big age span and big developmental differences, right? And so we do have them split up. Our after school program it's called Rainbow Youth Rising, and that's actually a new name for our after school program, and the youth helped name that for us. And it's kind of drop-in style. So after school, they get to come for a few hours, and they get to come in and out. It's not like a closed therapeutic group. If they come a little later because maybe they have other activities after school, or maybe they come right away and then they have to go home, to family. But that way, we're open for a few hours where they get to come and they get access to food. They get access to school supplies, hygiene supplies. We develop program and curriculum that fit their unique socio-emotional needs. So we're discussing, right, the suicide problem in the LGBT community, the substance abuse problem in the LGBT community, and what we can do about that. We teach coping skills, self-care skills, self-advocacy skills. We help them build a social support network that doesn't just include us, right? And so we build up their internal resources and their external resources to help them mitigate these horrible health issues that LGBTQ people face. And so that's what our kind of Rainbow Youth Rising drop-in program looks like. And that's 12 to 18. And that's really fitting that kind of middle school, high school age group. And then we do have a play group for folks that are identifying as gender expansive. When you're talking about gender versus sexual orientation, typically speaking, if you were talking to, let's say, a 5, 6-year-old, right, in our program, they may be more likely to talk about gender, right, and how they express their gender, but they're not really yet developmentally ready to talk about sexuality and sexual orientation. We see that come on board just a little bit later, right? But for the younger ones, they are starting to talk about their gender identity, their gender expression at young ages. In fact, we know through research that kids know their gender by age 5, about 4 to 5, right? Is they have a deep sense, a deep internal knowing of their gender identity already by ages 4 and 5. So not every gender expansive youth comes out that young. There's a lot that wait to come out until later. But for those that do come out, or for those that are questioning their gender identity or gender expression, we do have a group that runs once a month for that age group. 5 to 11 is the age group. And it's really just set up to be a play group, because these kids need to feel that they can just be free to be themselves in a safe environment. And so we really just play. It's so important for young kids to be playing with each other, developing those positive social interactions with their peers, and really just to have a sense of normalcy, that it's okay to be who they are. We also have a group called Tea Time for older teens, and that's more of the 12 to 18, and it's called Tea Time, and we do drink tea, and that's set up to be a little bit more therapeutic in nature. It is still an open group, and that runs Tuesdays after school every week, and we really dig into the things that they have to navigate being gender expansive. There's a lot of, I would say, unfortunately, because of the climate that we live in, they're really having to navigate a lot more issues than what we see even with people that are coming out as gay or bisexual or pan, right, in terms of sexual orientation. There's a lot more that gender expansive youth are having to navigate in their communities and schools. And so we really take a deep dive and help them navigate those issues. I am a cisgender woman, which means that my sex assigned at birth does match my gender identity. And so I do have a co-facilitator that identifies as trans. I found that was, very important when forming this group, that I have a facilitator in the room that can really relate to what these youth are going through. The Rainbow Youth Rising Drop-In Center, I think I forgot to say, is every Monday and Thursday after school. And then the play group runs the third Saturday of every month. And then, like I said, we do hold activities on the weekends, and the weekend activities are really just for fun. There's no curriculum. There's not like a structured curriculum on those days. It's ice skating or roller skating or camping or picnicking or hiking. And again, it's getting them out there. The LGBT community tends to be really isolated. They're up against so many different forms of discrimination or oppression, right? And so we, as a group though, so they may isolate on their own, but what we find is that they have told us that when they're in a group with their peers, with safe, trusting adults, that they actually feel safe to get out and involve themselves in the community. And that's why those weekend activities are also so important.
And you have resources for parents as well.
I do. Thank you for mentioning that. So we have 2 parent support groups happening right now. One is tied to the play group. So while we are running play group, there's a parent support group going on at the exact same time. A lot of them are the parents that bring a kid to play group, but some of them don't have kids that come to play group. Maybe their kids aren't really interested in a program like that, but the parent comes to be involved in the parent support group. And then we have a second parent support group for kind of the older teens, young adults, and that runs once a month as well. And that is on the 4th Thursday at 5 o'clock.
Great.
So you touched on a couple of issues, like you kind of briefly, you mentioned suicide, you mentioned addiction, you mentioned healthcare issues. So can you kind of dive a little bit deeper to help people understand, what are some of the most significant issues that the LGBTQ community is facing?
Suicide is the #1 problem right now. It's the leading cause of death in the LGBT community. In fact, 50% of gender expansive youth will have a suicide attempt before their 24th birthday. That number is too high. We cannot have half of the gender expansive population killing themselves. And they're killing themselves not because they're gender expansive, they're killing themselves because of the violence and oppression and discrimination they're facing on a daily basis. People that are gender expansive are more likely to lose their housing, more likely to lose their job, more likely to experience actual violence. There's a lot of dating violence when people find out that maybe somebody is trans. And so that takes a toll on somebody's psychological well-being. And a lot of people will then go on to attempt suicide. The good news here though, because that's kind of the bad news. The good news is though, that statistic drops down to 6% if they feel supported by any adult. Any adult. Every time I say that, it gives me goosebumps because that's why we're doing what we're doing, right? Which, by the way, is the national average for kind of your just hetero cisgender peers is 6%. It then drops down to 4% when they actually feel supported by their family. So that's why we don't just work directly with the youth. That's why the parent support groups are also so important. The other reason why, I didn't make a note of this earlier, but I do want to say we do a lot of trainings. We go into schools, we do public community trainings. And the reason why I actually feel like that's so important is because of that statistic. So if these youth are potentially if they feel supported, like I said, by any adult, that could be a school counselor, that could be the coach, right? That could be just a general community member that they happen to know, right? Maybe a friend's parent or something like that. So if we're out there educating and making sure people have the information and the resources to feel competent in supporting, right, these young people, then we've just saved hundreds and thousands of lives, right, by just doing that. Unfortunately, when you look at the kind of LGBT, so the lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, so when you're looking at sexual orientation, it is still 5 times higher than their heterosexual peers. So even though the number is higher for trans individuals, it's still way too high for anybody in the LGBT community. And so again, that's why we're doing what we're doing. And it's actually our #1 goal. We have 3 goals, right, that we measure and keep track of at the Rainbow Youth Center. And that's suicide ideation and self-harm, substance use and abuse, and then our effectiveness around community trainings and education and consultation. And we just feel like it's the 2 highest, it's the biggest health disparities that we're seeing right now for the LGBT community. The other things that we're seeing are homelessness. Again, it's kids getting kicked out of their home. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard over just my lifetime of my friends, my loved ones getting kicked out of their house because their parents find out that they're part of the LGBT community. LGBTQ people are more likely to, like I said earlier, get fired from jobs, lose their housing. So they're not choosing to be on the streets. These are direct acts of oppression and discrimination based on their gender or sexual orientation. We see higher, actually, so when you look at just overall, I'm going to talk about physical health now, right? When you look at overall physical health, the reason why we're seeing worse health outcomes for the LGBT community is because many of them are afraid to go to the doctor. They're getting so discriminated against in every other area of life that they're also afraid to seek out professional help when it comes to health. And so they won't do yearly screenings. If they get sick, they won't go in. It's really quite a big problem. And so we're seeing kind of the domino effect that happens because of that. And so those are the biggest issues that we're seeing right now for the LGBTQ plus community.
Well, we're grateful to have you guys in the community and offering all the services that you do. I was on your website and saw that part of the vision is to demystify stereotypes and empower through education, which you're talking about, all the training programs and things that you have. So could you speak a little bit about, how do we as a society go about demystifying stereotypes? I see the t-shirt you're wearing, you have, it's a unicorn, right? So week, and if you want to speak a little bit of that, and then also maybe talk about the appropriate use of pronouns and things that, people can get more comfortable with. We break down those barriers of understanding.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for going to our website and looking at our mission and our vision and what we're trying to do for the Rainbow Youth Center, populations that we serve. Unfortunately, for a long time now, and of course, culture shifts and changes as we grow and learn. However, there's still a lot of myths and stereotypes when it comes to the LGBT community. I still hear, probably the thing that I hear the most when I just talk to community members or parents is this idea of choice, right? That somehow we're choosing to be LGBTQ, and speaking as a queer woman, I can say in no way did I choose it for myself. This is a part of authentically who I am. And, you know, it's probably one of the hardest things to tackle, because you know, try to explain to somebody that it's inherent in who you are. It's a feeling, it's a deep knowing of who you are. And the best way I try to describe that to somebody is I ask them, well, when did you choose to be straight? That's the best way that I can try to get them to experientially understand that you know, this isn't an identity, you know, that somebody strive, you know, it's not like, you know, somebody trying to be, you know, a certain, you know, look a certain way or try to be a certain thing. It's really a part of our internal experience, right? We might express it some on the outside, right? I would say, but that's stereo, you know, talking about stereotypes, right? I hear all the time, well, aren't queer people just, you know, they're all tattooed and they have colored weird hair, and you know, they're just kind of eccentric, and you know, gay men have all these flamboyant mannerisms and they have to talk a certain way. And I'm like, no, you know, and obviously stereotypes come from somewhere. Maybe there are certain people, right, that have certain mannerisms or talk a certain way or look a certain way. I've always had funky hair, but I can tell you it's not because I'm queer. I just like funky hair, you know? And so, you know, part of this is humanizing who these people really are, because this, even though we're kind of joking about it, it snowballs into this bigger thing where all of a sudden they're now being called hoodlums, and you know, um, we get somehow caught up in, oh well, if they're tattooed and pierced, that must mean they're queer, and that means that they're a certain type of person, they're getting in trouble and they're breaking the law, and they're, you know, it's interesting how we all of a sudden get put in these boxes, right? And part of the work that we're doing is trying to disrupt that, right? Trying to help people understand it's not a choice, trying to help people understand why would anybody ask, right, for a life that where we're going to at some point in our life face discrimination and oppression because of the climate of our culture? You know, who would choose that? Who would ask for that in their life, right? And so by getting out there and doing these trainings, right, and educating people, that it humanizes us, and it humanizes these youth, right? And really what I try to do in my trainings is get people to understand it's one very small part of our identity, actually. And there might be individuals that like to make it a big part of their identity and make it a big part of who they are, but really we have, like, you know, many different types of identities just as one person. We're very layered as human beings, right? And so it's really just one part of who we are. It's not the whole person. And to not define us by being queer, by being in the LGBT community, that we're really so much more than that. That, you know, when we can finally have, you know, politicians that are out, movie stars that are out, artists that are out, we get to then see, right, who we could potentially be, right? And show the world that you know, we have value, that we contribute to this community in really big ways, actually, right? And that we're so much more than just being a part of the LGBTQ plus community. I know you had a question about pronouns. This is a big topic of conversation, right? In fact, the word of 2019 was they, which is now very popularly being used as a pronoun, right? So not to go into an English lesson, I'm gonna just kind of summarize this pretty quickly, but it refers to your personal gender identity, right? You can actually have more than one pronoun. This, I know that this also confuses people, but let me try to simplify this a little bit. I I know I have a very deep personal internal knowing that my gender is a woman, right? That's how it's how I feel, it's how I experience myself. And so when people refer to me, I want them to use the pronoun she, her, hers, because that's the pronoun in our language, right? That typically refers to a woman. Um, the same would be for somebody who identifies as a man, who has a deep sense, an internal knowing that their gender identity is male. And so that person may then, choose to use the pronouns he, him, his, and ask others to use those pronouns. The reason why they have has become so popular is because there's gender is a huge spectrum, right? We have learned in our culture that there's only man and woman, but in fact there's so much more in between. If you kind of think of this as a binary, man and woman, right? There's so much more in between. It's kind of like when we learned there was actually an infinite amount of numbers between 0 and 1, and we were like, what are you talking about? It goes 1, 2, right? Like it's kind of like that, right? So if you can conceptualize that in terms of what we learned in our math classes, right, we can then understand that gender and sexual orientation is on a spectrum. So there's many people, and this is not new. I really want to make sure people understand this is not a millennial thing. This is not new. That this has been a part of who we are since the beginning of time. Unfortunately, a lot of LGBTQ history has purposely been erased. People have tried to erase us. World War II is a great example of that, where there was a lot of literature, a lot of LGBTQ literature that was actually burned. And there's been other, times that has happened as well. But we have been able to find some old literature where we know that many, many, many indigenous cultures all over Europe, Asia, the Americas, all embraced spectrums of both gender and sexual orientation. And actually, there's a lot of old languages that have many words, not just man, woman, when you're talking about gender. There's a lot of cultures, and it's really interesting to kind of look this up, and you can learn all the words that people have and all the different words for pronouns that people have. And so they has already been a part of our English language. It always has been. There was a movement where people were making up different pronouns to help label how they feel. The reason why they took off is because it's already been used for so long that it kind of flows in our language. And so and they has been a controversial word. This is not the first time. If you look back in our literature, it's been used as a singular before, but it's also been used as a plural, and it's been controversial in the past as well. This is not the first time it's been controversial in English. So there's a lot of people that identify as genderqueer, gender fluid, that are kind of somewhere in between that spectrum, that love the word they, because then they don't have to pick on a binary, because maybe they don't feel all the way male or all the way female. And so that's why they really took off. And the reason why pronouns are so important is because it affirms and respects who that person is telling you they are. Because it's not up to us to assume or tell somebody else or define somebody else for them. That's not up to us. People get to define themselves and who they are. And that's why pronouns and starting to offer pronouns. I'm so used to now introducing myself as Jennifer, she, her, hers. And the reason for that is it allows the rest of the room to know that they get to define themselves, that I'm not going to make an assumption about who you are, and I don't want you to make an assumption about who I am. I'm going to define that for myself.
There's a lot of parallels. Of course, our mission is to raise consciousness, and we have been saying for quite some time you know, we've been around 9 years now, the EPIC has, that we are moving out of that dualistic paradigm. And so, and that spiritually speaking, it's, you know, one of the 4 agreements is, you know, don't make assumptions.
Right.
So, you know, I really see how the mission of EPIC and the mission of the Rainbow Youth Center, you know, coincide.
Yes.
What is, how do you overcome or how do you address the fact that, you know, for somebody to come to a training, that they must have some level of interest already, and yet a lot of the education to help undo the stereotypes probably needs to happen in a different arena. So how do you address that?
That's a brilliant question. It's why I've been really pushing to get into the schools and to get into businesses, to get into other nonprofits, and really not make it a choice, right? I really believe that this is crucial, right? That this kind of education is going to save people's lives. It's gonna grow healthy individuals, and so my part of my mission has been to do an all staff training at each of the schools. I'm slowly getting there. Escalante had me in for an all teachers training. That was great. What a great start, right? Durango High School had me train a few years back their district nurses, because we tend to see a lot of well, really any vulnerable population, right, that's having a hard time, they land in the nurse's office a lot of the time. That becomes for a lot of people a safe space in the schools, right? DHS also had, Durango High School also had me come in and do a training for their paraprofessionals, right? And so, oh, and I also did, I've done some staff and teacher trainings also in other counties. So Ouray County, San Miguel County, and Telluride. So it's kind of nice that this is starting to kind of branch out into other areas. It's hard getting into the schools because they have so much that they have to focus on, you know, that's requirements from the states and the feds. And so you know, it is hard. Has been hard to get in there and be able to train everybody, but I'm not going to give up on my mission, even in this, you know, global pandemic time that we're in. I've been, you know, working on how do I change things so I can provide virtual trainings for schools, for the community, right? San Juan Basin Health had me a few years come in and do a training for their whole staff. I know that Access Health System hired Adrian Lawyer to come up and do a very specific training around transgender health issues and mental health issues. So the ball has started rolling, and there's never been any trainings in this area. So, you know, this is a great start, right? Quite frankly. And so the ball's now rolling, and I think that people are going to start to see the value of the information and how it's really changing people's lives. And that's kind of how I'm tackling that issue, is just really trying to get into these kind of all staff, whether it's in schools, school district, nonprofits, businesses. Yeah, so I reach out and I try to talk with people, and I, you know, try to make partnerships and relationships, and see where that goes.
With the mission of EPIC, you know, like Lori said, we're trying to raise consciousness, and in turn, we are hoping that creates a kinder, more mindful society. You know, a culture not fear-based, but love-based. And so what would be your suggestions for parents that are, you know, they're kind of afraid. They're afraid that their child has a different outlook on life. I'll just say that, besides saying all of the other acronyms and everything. But like, what would you tell them to do if they're feeling afraid? How can they take the first steps to open communication
Mm.
with their child.
Mm.
What can they do to alleviate that level of anxiety they may have, that their friends or other family members or somebody may find out, about this? It's like, how do we move from that fear to a place where we can get the resources we need to help our child, our niece, our nephew, our friend, whoever may need your services?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great question, Lisa. The first thing I would say to them, if they're listening right now, is you're not alone. The fear is normal. Um, you know, there's been so many people that, we live in, the fancy word is, heteronormative or cisnormative society where we're just brought up, conditioned that, everybody's straight, everybody's cisgender. I mean, look at the way that's reflected through movies, through media, through anybody that's in leadership positions, right? And so, sometimes people can go their whole life not even knowing that there's something different out there. I've talked to many parents that said I never knew what the first time I ever heard the word transgender was, you know, um, from my child, or, the first time I ever heard of, pansexual was from my child. Most people have now heard, the word gay or lesbian, but, there's so much that's not being normalized in our society. So I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. I don't blame them for not having any understanding, for not knowing what to do, for not knowing how to navigate this. And sometimes the reaction is just, okay, like hands off, like we're just not going to deal with this, right? Um, and there's a lot of bigger forces right out there that shift our perspectives on things. Political environment shifts our perspectives. Spirituality or religious institutions shift our perspective on this. The way we were raised, our family traditions, our family beliefs shift the way that we think about things. And so it's really hard when we've been conditioned this one way our whole life. it, Nothing's going to just change overnight, and I don't expect anybody's perception or understanding of this to shift overnight. So the first thing is to take a deep breath, right, and to care for yourself first. If there's any parent listening and they have no idea what to do because their parent, maybe they're the only parent that knows their kid just came out to them, and they're the only one that knows, and they're holding this burden all by themselves. Take a deep breath and care for yourself first. um, you're coming with your own set of understanding and beliefs and upbringing, and your child is maybe coming from a completely different place, and that's going to be really hard to navigate. Doesn't mean it's impossible, right? And then I want to say there's lots of places to reach out. We're one of those places that you can reach out to. It's really easy to get a hold of me through our website. There's a link on there where you can just send us an email, and then of course my direct line phone number is on our website as well, and so you can always give me a call. There's I'm happy to have individual meetings with people virtually right now. There's parent support groups. There's a plethora of online. If it's too scary to speak to a person directly about what you're experiencing, we have a whole page on our website that's just resources. And we split them up for parents or for youth, right? Really, what we mean is like for adults and for youth. And so there's books, there's websites, there's blogs, and there's some not so good websites, not so good places to go, but we list all the ones that are really safe, have the correct information. And I would say, do some reading, start to try to familiarize yourself with language you've maybe never heard before, that you have no idea what it means, right? Um, maybe you're feeling safe enough to reach out, to other parents. There's lots of ways on these different websites you can reach out to other parents and become a part of groups, right? Not just our support group, but others. And so the next thing I want to say is don't be afraid to make mistakes. talk to your kid, right? Talk to your loved ones. If you have permission from that youth to talk to your best friend or talk to your sister, get permission first. That the youth that talks to you might not want anybody else to know yet. You might be their one safe person, right? And so, but talk to them, make mistakes, mess up, use the wrong word, and ask, when they go, what, mom or whatever, or dad, be like, wait, I don't understand. What did I do? Be brave to make those mistakes, because I do it all the time still, and I'm immersed in this, right? And so, and the language is changing all the time. The youth are teaching us so much, right, about language, and they're really taking this beautiful deep dive into what all this stuff looks like in ways that we haven't seen in probably centuries, right? And so ask them questions. Ask your youth, if a youth comes out to you, what does that mean to you to be gay or to be bi or to be trans? Help me understand your experience, right? Let them take you on that journey with them, because they came out to you for a reason, right? And so, and it's hard. It's like you were saying, Lisa. It's really hard in a world we've been so conditioned in this one way. And so, have patience with yourself, have patience with the youth, and know the youth is not going to have much patience with you, but that's okay, because that's a part. That's their job. That's their job, is to test you a little bit and push you along a little bit, right? But ask questions. There's really not too many wrong questions out there. If you're asking them with true care and love, right? Then there's really not too many questions that you can ask that are just, that are wrong questions to ask. Ask the questions, ask them their experience, let them take you with them on this adventure, and let them show you their world and what they've been experiencing and feeling and seeing through their eyes.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. We are in a culture where I think there's this whole undercurrent of, we don't really teach emotional intelligence.
Right.
We address that with children. So I can see where parents, as they grow up and they're enculturated, it's like, they are afraid to say the wrong thing or be open like that. That's fabulous advice. And thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And if you can just actually give the website and let people get in touch with you.
Yes, absolutely. So it's rainbowyouthcenter.org. And we are still running all of our program virtually. We're, doing the Zoom thing like everybody else. And so, reach out to us. There's many different ways to get involved. Maybe you're curious about what we do or curious about volunteering. Maybe you have a youth that would potentially be interested in our services. Reach out to me. I'm happy to do a Zoom one-on-one or a phone call, or whatever the need is to get more resources and information out there. We do have a Facebook page. What I love about our Facebook page is that we post several things weekly, and it's like uplifting LGBTQ news from around the world. These really cool stories that we find, right? Of these beautiful stories of like parents coming around and being able to support their child, or somebody in the public eye coming out and being brave enough to share that with the world, or I don't know, whatever it is. We like to share uplifting stories. I think far too often we are portrayed in very tragic lights. If you look at movies and TV shows, a lot of LGBT movies and books and things have really tragic, horrible endings. And so, I want youth and families to know that's not how it always ends. It doesn't always end in tragedy. In fact, people can have really great, big, full, beautiful lives. I'm a testament to that, right? And even though growing up in the 90s and being all secretive and closeted for a long time, I wasn't out for a long time. It was hard, but it's been so great being able to just be out and be who I am. And my story does not end in tragedy, and most people that I know, their story doesn't end in tragedy either. So yeah, so check out those two places for lots of really good information.
Thank you. And I feel like everyone's a unicorn. In between genders, not in between genders. So where can people get that shirt to support?
Yeah. So here, I don't know if you can see it. It says Four Corners Rainbow Youth Center on the bottom, and it just says magical. And we do still have shirts in stock. Go to our website, rainbowyouthcenter.org, and either call me or email us. And we have these wonderful t-shirts that you can get. We have awesome koozies and stickers and all sorts of fun ways to support us, and also just get the word out, because I know sometimes I still hear that people don't know we exist and that we're here. So yeah, come get a really cool really cool unicorn t-shirt from us.
Super cool t-shirt for sure. We'll be getting some of those. And we talked about parents. I know we're kind of closing here, but just, kids are afraid also. They're afraid to come out to their parents. They're afraid to talk to their friends or anything. So you guys have created this amazing safe space. If they don't have someone else to talk to, they can call you direct. They can come there directly and be welcome to be in a space where they can chat and get some support, maybe talk through how they should approach their family and friends with who they are and what they want to share.
Exactly. And you do not have to identify as LGBTQ to access our services. We have many allies that come because they have a friend that's gay, or their brother is trans, or they have two gay moms, or whatever it is. And so please allies out there, you are so welcome in our space. In fact, we need you. Some of our allies have been our greatest advocates and leaders at the Rainbow Youth Center, and really helped a lot of youth. So, and you also don't have to know. If you're questioning and you're like, I have no clue how to even think about my sexuality or my gender expression, we're the place for you, because here's the deal. It's sometimes constantly moving and shifting and evolving. Not many of us stay stay in this one little box for the 80 years or whatever that we live. I think the way I've experienced sexuality and gender has definitely changed over the years, and that's really, really normal, right? And so if you're just not sure, that is okay. You are so welcome, and we want you to join.
Thank you.
And so you are a 501c3, and if of course you are funded by donations, so can people donate through the website?
Absolutely. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And right now we most of the donations that people are giving right now are going towards our care package program and our emergency relief program. We were able to get some money from the community foundation. And what that's going to right now is to those families that are in most need. Maybe parents lost jobs, or they didn't have any technology, and so we're helping kids get connected, helping get necessities, food and other necessities that they need that maybe their families are struggling with. And we also have a care package program right now. That this is a horribly isolating situation that we're going through, and for the LGBT community, they were already felt so isolated, and so our care packages really help with that stress relief. We're sending self-care supplies and art supplies and snacks and ways to really engage them in activities. We're all learning how to knit right now. We've been doing art projects virtually, and so the feedback I'm getting is it's really boosting their mood. It's boosting their connection with community, their connection with life. That it's bringing them out of boredom, and it's helping them stay really just engaged in life. So thank you to everyone that's already given since this pandemic helped. It is all going back directly to the youth, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your time. Again, please visit the rainbowcenter.org for more information on services and building community. And if you want information on E.P.I.C, you can visit us at epicmag.org.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.